Let us pray. As Canadians and as Albertans, we give thanks for the precious gifts of freedom and peace which we enjoy. As members of this Legislative Assembly, we rededicate ourselves to the valued traditions of parliamentary democracy as a means of serving our province and our country. Amen.
Introduction of visitors, presenting petitions, reading and receiving petitions, presenting reports by standing and special committees, notices of motions, introduction of bills.
The Honourable Minister of responsible for seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request leave to introduce Bill number 25, the Michener Centre Act. This being a money bill is honor the Honourable Lieutenant Governor, having been informed of the contents of this bill, recommends the same to the Assembly. Mr. Speaker, this bill is to put in place a Board of Directors for Michener Centre, which will ensure that all services continue to provide the highest quality of care to Michener Centre residents, and will form consultative partnerships with community and government agencies to ensure an effective and quality continuum of care.
Having heard the motion for first reading of Bill number 25, Michener Centre Act, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Bill number 25, Michener Centre Act, introduced by the Honourable Mr. Brassard, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
The Honourable Minister of Career Development and Employment.
Here, I'm pleased today to table the annual report of the Department of Career Development and Employment for the fiscal period April 1st, 1990 to March 31st, 1991.
Introduction of special guests.
The Honourable Member for Innisfail.
Mr. Speaker, it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you, through you to the members of the Legislative Assembly, a class of grade 6 students from the Innisfail John Wilson Elementary School. These grade 6 students are accompanied by their teachers, Miss Graham, Mrs. Layden, and also parents, Mrs. Hildebrandt and Miss Olson. Also, they have an aged student, Dale Olson. They are seated in the public gallery, and I would ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Mountain View.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce some guests visiting with us from Wolfville, Nova Scotia today. They're in the public gallery. They're Cecil and Hildred Hawksworth. In his career as a chef, Cecil Hawksworth served over 1 million people, among them Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth at Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. They're accompanied by Mrs. Elsie Hawksworth of Edmonton. I'd like to have them rise and be greeted by our members and ask them to extend a warm Alberta welcome.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Avonmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce to you and through you to members of the Assembly 25 students from Mill Creek School. They are accompanied by teachers Ms. Bertinoli and Miss Reed. They are seated in the public gallery. No, they're in the members gallery. I would ask that they now rise and receive the warm welcome of this Assembly.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Beverley.
Mr. Speaker, I'm also delighted today to you and to members of the Assembly 44 students from the fine school in Clare in Edmonton Beverley, the Fraser School. There are 44 students. They're accompanied by their teachers, Ms. Corrine McKinnon and Ms. Allison Edwards. They're seated in both the members and the public galleries. I now ask them to rise and receive the welcome of the Assembly.
The Honourable Member for Westlock Sturgeon.
Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you 21 members of a high school leadership class in the male. Obviously, a good many future Liberal candidates in there. Sitting in the members' gallery, Mr. Speaker. Sitting in the members' gallery, accompanied by group leaders Norman Zweifel and Ms. Glenda Beckholt. If they'd stand recognized, be recognized by the legislature, I'm sure they appreciate it.
The Honourable Minister of Culture and Multiculturalism.
Speaker, I saw a Tory candidate or two there as well, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce a resident of Edmonton Park Allen to the legislature today. He has a long and distinguished history of service to Edmonton in both the business sector and in public service, Mr. Speaker. Edgerton King is here today and was anxious to be here as my colleague, the minister responsible for seniors, introduced Bill 25, the Michener Center Act. Mr. King's current efforts are mostly involved in helping assure excellent quality of life for the residents of Michener. I know he's anxious to receive a warm welcome from the audience. I'd like, or the Assembly, I'd ask Edge to stand up and receive that traditional welcome.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Pleased today to introduce another community activist and another community volunteer. He's really actually Mr. Volunteer in the city of Edmonton. He's a resident, a very fine resident of the constituency of Edmonton-Calder. Mr. Jim Acton is in the members' gallery, and I'd ask him to rise and receive the warm welcome from all members of the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the government lost one of its more prominent members with the resignation of the MLA for Three Hills. Mr. Speaker, we obviously had one very unhappy Conservative MLA. Now, it's not surprising, Mr. Speaker, that the Premier made her the scapegoat for the principal fiasco, and clearly she was unhappy about the dispute with the government and the town of Trochu over the tire plant, Mr. Speaker. But according to the MLA's own PC Constituency Association, the final straw was the mismanagement of the debt by this provincial government, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Premier is simply this. How can the Premier hope to convince Albertans about the growing need for Alberta's debt when it can't even convince their own backbenchers, Mr. Speaker?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition's allegations, I guess you could call them, in asking his question are incorrect, but that's not unusual with his questions. But it does give me an opportunity to say, Mr. Speaker, that I'm quite sad to see Mrs. Osterman leave the legislature. She's a talented, experienced MLA, was a fine member of our cabinet and our caucus, and I enjoyed working with her, and I wished her very well in the future.
I don't think the joy was the same on her part, Mr. Speaker. That's the point I was trying to make. But, Mr. Speaker, the government has lost confidence with its own members over its mismanagement and waste. We've had, Mr. Speaker, as mentioned before, 8 successive deficits totaling well over $15 billion. We've gone from a have province with assets to a debtor province, Mr. Speaker, and that's the point the member from Three Hills was talking about in Hansard, if you look in this particular legislature, Mr. Speaker. My question is straightforward. This government's in disarray, Mr. Speaker. Why doesn't the Premier do the right thing? Let's clear the air. When's the Premier going to call an election, Mr. Speaker?
Pretty aggressive, Ray.
Can't believe it.
The laugh of the day.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think there's a number of MLAs, including myself, who do not like debt or deficits, and We naturally don't like to have circumstances where they're necessary or needed. As far as the honourable member talking about an election, Speaker, I should just recall for him, we just had one in Little Bow, and the honourable member was pretty embarrassed.
Quite an election, Mr. Speaker, where in the Tory stronghold it went from 80% to 35%. Some mandate, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I know that he says he doesn't like debt, but as treasurer, deficit debt seems to, Mr. Speaker.
Got that right.
But, Mr. Speaker, let's look at election. I understand the Premier said his preference was to get the constituency of Three Hills represented as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker. Well, I might point out, Mr. Speaker, the constituents of Calgary-Buffalo have been waiting for more than 100 days to be represented in the Alberta legislature.
Right.
Here's a chance, at least for a mini-election, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Premier, worrying about Calgary-Buffalo after the 100 days, will he call the by-election in Calgary-Buffalo now so that they can be represented in the legislature?
Hear, hear.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is true that I have, and the government has taken some time. We felt with former MLA Sheldon Schumer it was proper, and we wanted to leave a period of time where we might experience and share a certain amount of grief at the loss of such an outstanding member of our legislature. And we now, Mr. Speaker, as the members probably know, have a period of time, some 6 months after a member either resigns or leaves a seat for whatever reason, that a by-election should be called. That's the law of this legislature. So I would hope, Mr. Speaker, that we will be moving on a Calgary-Buffalo by-election quite soon.
Second main question.
Mr. Speaker, this is Mental Health Week, although for some reason the minister hasn't made a ministerial statement about it. We had the one she was going to do, Mr. Speaker, but I expect it's because of the shameful state of this government's mental health policies. Mr. Speaker, let me say that we have the tragic case of Brenda Strandley, who suffered from a mental illness, who was discharged from hospital for the second time in a month on February the 26th. She disappeared on February the 28th until her body was found in the North Saskatchewan River last week. Mr. Speaker, she was discharged from the hospital. There was no community follow-up, and her family was not even informed of her discharge. My question to the Minister of Health, Mr. Speaker, is simply this. Brenda Strandley's family is extremely upset, understandably so, Mr. Speaker, and they want some answers. The question is simply this. Why did the system fail her so terribly, Mr. Speaker? How could this happen?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that any death of this nature is a tragedy, and certainly it is one which all of us are saddened to hear. In terms of the family's concern about hospital treatment, the honourable member knows that if they wish to make a formal complaint through the college with respect to a physician, or through the hospital itself, or through the Health Facilities Review Committee, all those mechanisms are in place, and I would encourage the family to do that when the time is right for them to do so. In terms of Mental Health Week and in terms of the work that we are doing, on the contrary, I think the progress that we're making in mental health is perhaps slower than a lot of us would like, but the progress is towards bringing the issue out in the open, to getting into board governance for the institutions, to ensuring that as we focus on healthcare in the 21st century, it's more focused towards community than towards institutionalization, and the mix in between. And I think the paper of future directions in mental health that I tabled in the last couple of weeks in this assembly is testament to this government's commitment to ensuring that mental health is part of the mainstream of the health sector.
That's nice talk.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's not happening. It's one thing to talk about deinstitutionalization, Mr. Speaker, but for this government that's become dumping.
That's right.
Often out there with no backup services, with no housing, Mr. Speaker.
No
And the point with this particular case, Mr. Speaker, a friend had even a mental health worker that checked into her, this might have been avoided, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
So my question to the minister is simply this. Why is she so reluctant to put the necessary resources in to the backup services, Mr. Speaker? Perhaps we can avoid these tragedies in the future.
Good point. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to get into the issue more openly during the estimates of the Department of Health, but in fact, we have a $56 million budget in mental health in the votes of the Department of Health. Of that, $34 million is provided directly to community-based services. I recognize they're not always there when they need them, so the issue becomes ensuring that we work with community and institution to ensure that when people are in the community and need the hospital access, or in the hospital and need the community access, there's a better working between what are too often two solitudes in that area. That is the commitment, that is the directional statement, and I believe it's the appropriate direction to be taking.
The minister says that, Mr. Speaker, but the reality is it's not happening. And the whole push now, Mr. Speaker, in the future, they're talking about more deinstitutionalization. We've had this in the past,
right.
and they're still not providing the backup services, Mr. Speaker. And my question simply to the minister is simply this. How can she even consider contemplating discharging even more of the mentally ill to the communities without the proper resource when the results have the potential to be so tragic, Mr. Speaker?
Here. Mr. Speaker, I am not discharging people who need acute care from hospitals. Decisions are made with respect to a person's care within the facility by professionals. In the area of acute emergency, we've set aside some resources in the budget this year to look at how we might have the existing facilities deal better with acute psychiatric emergency. And yet I'm not convinced that dollars, and it really reflects back on the member for Highlands' motion yesterday, I'm not convinced that dollars are the only answer to this. It's a matter of bringing these two groups together to ensure that we're dealing not only with the emergency care, but the acute care. Too often, I think the leader of the opposition assumes that the only pieces of the health system are the acute care system and community living. Issues in health are about what is in between those two ends and trying to pull them all together. I acknowledge that we're not doing everything the honourable member would like. I regret, fundamentally regret, the tragedies that can occur, but we have to be focusing the system towards that goal, and as I say, I would be happy to get into it more during our estimates and deal with what we are doing in the $56 million devoted to mental health in the province.
For Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, both the Royal and the Toronto-Dominion banks have recently predicted that Alberta's economic growth over the next year will be 1/2 as great as the rate of growth predicted by this treasurer in his recent April budget. This prediction, this information has terminal implications for the treasurer's guess that government revenues will increase annually by 6% over the next number of years. Can the treasurer explain how he expects to reach this 6% revenue growth, which somehow is going to save his budgets in the future in light of this new economic information?
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that while we would probably find it useless to debate one computer model against another computer model, which is really what the member from Meadowlark is suggesting when we take on this debate about whose computer is generating the right growth numbers, let me say that this is not an exact science. But I do have good advisors in Treasury and in government as well who provide to us, and on a reasonable basis track, the kinds of characteristics of our economy which are important to Albertans, which most Albertans know about. For example, they know that in Alberta there is a tremendous excitement about the potential in this province, one which is characterized by investment coming here. We have a very great diversified economy, and we have a lot of people that work in this province, Mr. Speaker. And those issues really are the ones which drive the real economic growth of any province. And at the same time, Mr. Speaker, because the inflation has been under control, that we do have real growth predicted in this province. And in the budget address, Mr. Speaker, which we brought down 3 weeks back, we in fact predicted that Alberta in 92 would have a growth rate approximating 2.5% in 92. That would be probably one of the strongest growth rates of any province in Canada, Mr. Speaker. And as all Albertans know, in comparison to last year, 91, Alberta was the only province to have real economic growth, and we forecast that as well, Mr. Speaker, and it's turned out to be true. Now, Mr. Speaker, I know you're edgy here, but I just want to complete this analysis by saying people make these kinds of forecasts based on something called general equilibrium models. They plug in some numbers, they wait for the machine to crank out the numbers, and they say, alas, here's the best guess we have. But in fact, Mr. Speaker, our analysis of these forecasts lead us to confirm the fact that our own forecasts have been as accurate as theirs, and we stand by the 2.5% real growth rate for Alberta for 92, the best in Canada.
Edgy, Mr. Speaker. Don't you just wish you had a radar screen to track the Treasurer's answers some days? The Royal Bank, and I quote, goes on to say that they expect Alberta to be the only province to post a decline in the number of jobs for the coming year, the only province in Canada. Mr. Speaker, could the Treasurer please indicate exactly where the 15,000 new jobs that he has predicted in his budget are going to come from?
Mr. Speaker, I enjoy discussions with the various banks that we visit with from time to time, and I can say that we had some fairly interesting analysis and discussions about the forecasts made by various banks. I have found, though, in the past 5 years that without a fail, most of those banks who make the bank economists who make the low forecast generally forget about the strength of this economy. And I always remind them about some key things. For example, did you happen to factor in this time the forestry diversification, the fact that the Alpac project in Athabasca is proceeding, some $1 billion potential investment in that particular project? And by the way, did you mention to your analysts that the pipeline expansion taking place in this province is probably unmatched in the history of Alberta? And still further, did you know about the petrochemical industry expanding again in this province with Dow Chemical in Sherwood Park and Strathcona investing heavily? Now, those are just some of the highlights I talk about, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, analysts who sit in their Toronto offices, depending upon historical data which is out of date, like the member from Meadowlark, out of date, in fact, are always draw to their attention these facts. They say, you know, we didn't know the exciting things are happening in your province. I guess we're just wrong.
It's just amazing to see the great guru of this Treasury tell other predictors that they're wrong and he's right. Mr. Speaker, it's almost impossible to find a prediction upon which, in fact, he has been right. In light of the serious questions that this new economic information raises, Mr. Speaker, will the Treasurer at least make the commitment that he will provide to this legislature, to the people of Alberta, quarterly updates on the progress that he's making towards his budget over the coming year?
Veto committee. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've worn this particular Treasury critic out 2 times now, so I guess he won't be around long with his kind of position, because he's one of the doom and gloomers, Mr. Speaker. One of the doom and gloomers. He's the one who gets great delight talking about what's going wrong in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. But Albertans know that there's a lot of things going right, and that's the clear message. Now, Mr. Speaker, what we have said in this budget document, which have been presented to the people of Alberta, a document, Mr. Speaker, which speaks to the needs of Albertans in terms of those key priority areas of health and education. And, Mr. Speaker, expresses one of the most quickest capsulated expressions of confidence that any Albertan could ever imagine, a tax cut. This budget has a tax cut in it, Mr. Speaker, and that speaks to our view of the future of this province. The confidence, Mr. Speaker, of Albertans will be expressed clearly in their consumption. They spend a lot of money, Mr. Speaker, because they deserve it, because there's no taxes in this province in comparison with any other province in Canada. They have the money in their pockets. They're spending on items, Mr. Speaker, and with the low interest rates, they're now starting to build houses for housing for themselves. That's one of the objectives of this government. All in all, Mr. Speaker, I would like to match the position of Alberta against any province in Canada on any issue, Mr. Speaker, and I know what the result will be. The people of Alberta know what it would be. Alberta first, Mr. Speaker, Alberta first.
The honourable member for Calgary-Fish Creek.
Mr. Speaker, in view of the lengthy period of time that Quebec has been away from the constitutional negotiating table, many of our constituents were encouraged yesterday to see Premier Bourassa in our province yesterday. I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, could the Premier share with the Assembly his assessment of Premier Bourassa's willingness to genuinely negotiate? In other words, Mr. Speaker, did yesterday's discussions indicate a Quebec that was trying to understand the Alberta point of view, or was it merely a Western sales trip to put more pressure on Albertans to accept Quebec's constitutional demands?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday's meeting was a good meeting. I enjoyed the meeting. It was a meeting between premiers, yes, but between friends as well. Friends who've been working together now, I guess, some 20 years in public life, and actually the senior premiers in the First Minister's meetings. I was quite impressed by the desire by Premier Bourassa to understand the details of the Alberta Select Committee's report, to understand our desires for United Canada, a Canada with Quebec in it, and also meaningful Senate reform, including a Triple E Senate. We had a good discussion of these issues, and I had a sense of a leader who was genuinely going across the province looking to attain the goal of a united Canada. And we, in our case here in Alberta, are looking to fully understand their needs and their aspirations. And I think as we talked together, I was feeling better and better about the future outcome of our constitutional meetings.
Mr. Speaker, during yesterday afternoon's news conference, Premier Bourassa made this interesting comment, I quote, "If we have an idea of what is an effective Senate, then we could discuss the question of the numbers." Mr. Speaker, it's beginning to look more and more like a trade-off is coming, whereby the reformed Senate's powers could be seriously eroded in order to get equal representation for the provinces. I'm wondering, Mr. Speaker, could the Premier comment on the implications of this apparent trade-off mentioned yesterday by Premier Bourassa?
Mr. Speaker, there are some commentators who are trying to draw that conclusion. Certainly, that was not the way our discussions went yesterday. Premier Bourassa had his first chance, as did his Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, meeting with our colleague, the Honourable Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs, that they were able to meet and discuss the Select Committee's report and all the various recommendations in it. But Premier Bourassa had with me a chance for the first time to discuss Alberta's views of how the effective powers of a Senate could be developed. And he was quite interested in that, and he started to realize that a Triple E Senate is not a threat to Quebec or a threat to any province. As a matter of fact, it is in a way an ally, and I think would provide not just Quebec, but every province with an opportunity to be fully influential in the future national decisions that will be made in Parliament. So I felt very good when previously there had been comments that Quebec was saying absolutely no in terms of equal. And that was not the case yesterday at all. As a matter of fact, the position was if we can understand, we go for the elected, yes, Alberta's made the breakthrough there. We discussed the effective, and we want it to be effective, and understanding how the effective powers might work, then we're prepared to look at the numbers of senators. And this, Mr. Speaker, is from a government and a leader who I think is trying to find a solution to recognize not just Quebec's aspirations in a new constitutional agreement, but since this is the Canada round, to recognize the West and Alberta's desires and needs as well. So I felt good about that discussion.
Highlands.
Mr. Speaker, on April 15th, the minister responsible for seniors said that there was absolutely no change in programs for seniors this year, but the seniors are asking why it is that they're facing a 20% budgetary cut from the government with respect to funding of self-contained housing programs. Mr. Speaker, it's also been said that the government is suggesting that $5 million could be saved to the government by making low-income seniors pay 30% of their income rather than 25% for their housing. Mr. Speaker, that's $600 a month, a year more, and that hurts low-income seniors. So my question to the minister is this: can he explain why the budget for this program has been reduced by 20%, and if it is the government's intention to ask the low-income seniors to pick up the difference between the tabs?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. On April 15th, if that is the date that is being quoted, we did indeed discuss the program delivery for seniors in this province. And at that time, I did mention that the only program that was altered at all was indeed the self-contained housing units. It's true. We're not building as many self-contained units this year as we would like to. There's no question about that. There has been no change in the program whatsoever, but we're not building as many anything in this province this year. Any capital projects have been reduced, and that's in keeping with the kind of budget and budgetary conditions that we're facing. But there has been no change to any programs in delivery of services to seniors in this province, in this budget.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's not exactly what he said on April 15th, but that point aside, let me suggest to the minister that there is a serious backlog of people waiting to get into long-term care facilities and a serious backlog here in Edmonton and in Calgary of people waiting to get into self-contained units. Is the minister saying that there's going to be no additional help for these people, that they're on their own, or is he telling us that they're just going to have to pay more? Which is it?
I'm saying nothing of the sort, Mr. Speaker, and I don't pretend to stand here and make statements on behalf of the Minister of Municipal Affairs, whose responsibility it is to administer this program. But let me tell you, our concern for the seniors and the welfare of seniors in this province has not diminished one iota. As a matter of fact, it continues to increase. I have met with... I am continuing to meet with 22 agencies representing almost 100,000 seniors in this province on an ongoing basis. And we're discussing all of these issues as the way it should be. In fact, it's the way that the seniors themselves had asked for program delivery in the future. They wanted to be a part of this decision-making, and they are, Mr. Speaker, and will continue to be a part of any future decisions affecting them.
Good work.
The honourable member for Edmonton Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, the dangerous and unacceptable waiting lists for cancer patients needing radiation treatment is a source of great concern for caregivers, patients, and families. My questions are to the Minister of Health. I understand that steps are being taken to alleviate the backlog in the future. Will the Minister please tell us what immediate action the Minister is taking to deal with the crisis?
Mr. Speaker, the fact that the incidence of cancer in Alberta is rising as a portion of our population is not new news, not to the member for Gold Bar nor to the government. And finding the resources and the facilities to deal with that was part of what compelled the government in the late 80s to look to the expansion of the Cross Cancer Institute close to the University of Alberta campus. The capital project will essentially finish this current year. Certainly there will be more equipment in to do the radiological treatment that is that cancer it needs. And yet it's not just in the area of capital facilities that this government is showing leadership with respect to cancer. I would remind the honourable member that so dedicate funds out of the Heritage Savings and Trust Fund towards cancer research. And as well, many of our prevention efforts have to be towards giving to Albertans the information they need to reduce their own risk of cancer. It is a matter of looking at the illness as a disease and managing the waiting lists appropriately. And I know that the staff and physicians at the Cross Cancer Institute are doing exactly that very competently.
Mr. Speaker, certainly we all appreciate the research that's going on, but this is an emergency, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be dealt with. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister if the Minister has collaborated with other Western provinces to deal with the demand, which was, yes, quite correctly projected. This isn't a surprise, but ensuring that patients aren't at great risk waiting for treatment.
Mr. Speaker, it's inappropriate to suggest that all patients have to wait for the 6 weeks, which was outlined in the newspaper this morning. Some cancers are able to start treatment earlier, and often because of testing leading up to finally diagnosing what treatment is needed can take a longer time. Nonetheless, I think we have to be concerned about the creeping increase in that waiting list. With respect to other Western provinces, I think certainly as health ministers we are committed to getting the best use of the resources we dedicate to health in Canada. In fact, one of the major Western provinces, British Columbia, is experiencing an even more difficult waiting list than Alberta. But I think the issue is not to simply react as an emergency to the issue, but rather to support those physicians who are making those decisions, knowing that that capital project will come on stream later this year.
For Innisfail.
Ever since I was elected to represent the community surrounding Pine Lake, there's been allegations and counter-allegations about the information being used in the decision-making process to approve the regional landfill at Pine Lake. The latest allegations have come from the member of Edmonton Jasper Place, alleging that the staff of the Department of Environment provided erroneous groundwater flow data. The Minister of Environment is on record of committing to refute this allegation. Can he now provide the House with information to correct the impression left by the honourable member from Edmonton Jasper Place?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I made that commitment during estimates last night, and the fact is, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place has accused me of promoting the Pine Lake landfill site, which is absolutely false, Mr. Speaker. He has accused officials in my department, good thinking, good working, committed people, of providing the local authorities with erroneous information, which, Mr. Speaker, calls into question the integrity of these good, honest people, and that causes me grave concern. Mr. Speaker, Alberta Environment has done extensive testing on the site. The initial tests were done in 1988, with additional testing done in 1989 and in 1991. Now, in August of 1990, the Central Alberta Regional Waste Authority solicitors contracted Golder Associates, and he likes to quote from Golder Associates, to review reports and information compiled by Alberta Environment and to provide an independent assessment of the geological and hydrogeological information. Now listen to this. The Golder Associates Limited report did not refute Alberta Environment's assessment of the hydrogeology of the site, nor the suitability of the site to develop the regional sanitary landfill. Mr. Speaker, the appropriate technical information is contained in this document, as well as history related to the site, as well as recent decisions by local authorities, and I would like to file this information with the Assembly today.
Mr. Speaker, the Development Appeal Board has approved the landfill with a number of conditions. Those conditions essentially elevate the landfill status and therefore the cost to local taxpayers. Can the minister indicate whether he'll provide additional funding for the landfill with these conditions?
Well, again, the honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place slipped me a note the other day and said, surely you're not going to provide funding for this Cadillac proposal which calls for double clay liners and certain other conditions to alleviate the environmental concerns. Basically, we provide funding for regional landfill sites based on conventional sites and associated transfer stations, and that is our commitment of funding. Basically, what the Development Appeal Board has said is that this site has to be built to standards that would accommodate hazardous waste. In other words, would have to be built to the same standards as the landfill at the Swan Hills Hazardous Waste Facility. And no, we will not be funding those kinds of enhancements.
The honourable member for Edmonton Jasper Place.
Oh, moi? It's tempting, but Mr. Speaker, the Natural Resources Conservation Board has been using a very elastic set of criteria to determine who qualifies for intervenor funding. In the Swan Hills case, there was broad criteria. Groups from Edmonton were funded, the Indian Association of Alberta. In the Three Sisters project, they cut it back rather dramatically, including, excluding the downstream water users, and so far excluding some of the local residents. In the case of the Can Alta project, they've excluded absolutely everybody, so there's no intervenors whatsoever. Now, the exclusion of intervenors may be a great convenience to the friends of the Premier who operate that project, the Brian Bygraves, the Jack Parkers, the Norm Kimballs, but it makes a mockery of the process, a hearing with no intervenors. And I would like to ask the Minister of the Environment if he will address the concern expressed most recently by the Natural Resources Conservation Board in their decision that their hands are tied due to the restrictive and politically motivated nature of the legislation. Will he meet with Mr. DeSorcy and discuss these concerns?
Well, I meet with Mr. DeSorcy on a consistent basis, and we discuss these situations, but the board was set up to be an independent body to adjudicate on an unemotional and unbiased basis the social, the economic, and the environmental impact of a particular project. It is entirely up to that board as to whether they will give intervenor funding, and if they give intervenor funding, the extent to which that intervenor funding shall be handed out. Relative to the Can Alta situation, there is a report, and I'm sure the honourable member has it, and it outlines quite clearly the position of the NRCB relative to why they are not going to give intervenor funding with respect to the Can Alta project.
Yeah, and what it says is their hands are tied by the legislation. A supplementary question is to the Premier. In January of 1991, the former member for Calgary-Buffalo circulated a petition demanding that the government release secret financial details of the arrangements between the government and Can Alta Golf Management Limited. I'm wondering if the Premier will commit to a full public disclosure of all relevant documents in respect of the relationship between the government and Can Alta before this hearing proceeds in the month of June.
Mr. Speaker, I'm puzzled at the honourable member wanting to commit taxpayers' dollars from his earlier question, taxpayers' dollars to interveners who have no direct interest in a project. I wonder, for what reason would he want the taxpayers of Alberta to send money to those who have no interest in a particular project? That I can understand some people who would like to get taxpayers' dollars, and they would like to be able to travel around to hearings, I guess, and spend those dollars. But I'm really puzzled why an elected member would want that to happen. Now, the honourable member also talked about Can Alta. Can Alta was a selection of them to run and manage the Kananaskis Golf Course was made while I wasn't a member of this government. But nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I think the honourable member and Albertans, when they go there, come away with nothing but praise and admiration for the way the Kananaskis Golf Courses are managed. If the honourable member has some particular information that he thinks is something he requires in his legislative responsibilities, he should put it on the order paper and they'll be dealt with.
Honourable member for Calgary-McKnight. Order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the proposed two-count system of funding education, introduced without consultation, is having an adverse and direct effect now on the current contract negotiations between teachers and school boards. School boards are building contingency funds to the detriment of other expenditures in order to be protected from the adverse effects of the two-count system. In light of this adverse effect and the fact that 25,000 students and 1,000 teachers are on strike, will the minister reconsider the two-count policy?
I thought she pushed it last
Well,
year.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Public Works, just almost took the words right out of my mouth. The Honourable Member across the way, in April of 19, and that's difficult. And you know that's difficult.
Yeah, she pushed
April
it
of
last
1991, the member stood in this assembly and called for, agreed to, a two-count system. I'll repeat her words, where she said, maybe two isn't enough, but two will do. Up only, up and down? Well, as long as it meets the needs. If the number of students goes down, of course you wouldn't have to fund as much. That only makes sense.
Liberal.
Mr. Speaker, the minister knows full well, and it is enhancer, that we were talking about ESL funding, which is a unique program. The fact is there's a direct cause and effect which is leading to this labor strife. I ask the minister again, would he review these short-sighted funding policies to end the situation which exists right now?
Mr. Speaker, the government announced in early January that we'd be providing a 3%, on behalf of Alberta taxpayers, that we would be providing a 3% grant rate increase. Combine that with approximately a volume and enrollment increase of another at least 2%, in some cases up to 3%. Your school boards are looking at almost a 6% increase in their funding in various parts of this province. Mr. Speaker, I only have to look across the country and see that compared to virtually every single province in this country, Alberta's grants to school boards this year exceeds virtually every other province in the Dominion. I think of Saskatchewan, under the NDP government in Saskatchewan. They've reduced their grants this year by 2%. And they've promised, you know what, Mr. Speaker, they've promised to do the same thing next year. And in Ontario, Mr. Speaker, they've announced a 1% grant rate increase. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, but in all the NDP governments across this country, school boards are forced with having to fire teachers because of funding by, in this case, NDP governments. So Mr. Speaker, I ask all school boards in this province to look very carefully at how they spend taxpayers' dollars and to find different ways to fund education in this province. And I once again, I can hardly stand on behalf of the government and ask provincial taxpayers to pay for an education for children who aren't in school. They shouldn't be asked to fund an education for phantom students.
Try Liberal fantasy.
The Honourable Member for Athabasca-Lac-La-Biche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question today is to the Honourable Minister of Health. The Sir Winston Churchill Park is an island park located on Big Island in southeast area of Lac-La-Biche. The causeway was constructed in 1966 from Shelton's Point on the mainland through Long Island to Big Island. I believe it was promoted by Liberal MP at the time. This construction of the causeway blocked natural flow of water, of course, between these points. This situation has created numerous complaints, including from the Mayor of Lac-La-Biche, in respect to odors and, more importantly, the potential health concern in that area. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Minister of Health is, could the Minister explain to this Assembly and also my constituents as to what is being done to address this issue?
Good question.
Mr. Speaker, a study was, I thought I'd answer it, it was asked. The study was done, the Departments of Environment and Forestry, Lands and Wildlife, with respect to some of the aspects of the waterway, but from a health point of view, and I'll restrict my comments to that, under the authority of the Public Health Act, the Athabasca Health Unit in this case has the authority to initiate any action if conditions exist that present a risk to public health. There's no doubt that there are occasions when the conditions in the causeway are perhaps aesthetically unpleasing. Whether or not that means they're a public health hazard is the question. And it's one that the Athabasca Health Unit has asked. They have indicated to me, in fact, recently in correspondence between us, that while they're keeping an eye on the situation very closely, they have not identified any health concerns with respect to the causeway at this time.
Thank you. My supplement is to the Honourable Minister of Environment. Mr. Speaker, could the Minister give some assurance that we would, if there is a health hazard identified in this particular area, would our government be able to deal with the issue appropriately?
Well, we've had quite a bit of correspondence.
Order, please. Order, please. Order. Order. The chair regrets to advise that that is really a hypothetical question. The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Mr. Speaker, proposed increases in student fees are placing serious limitations on the ability of the financially disadvantaged to attend post-secondary institutions. To prevent our universities and colleges from becoming exclusive clubs for the rich, the Smith Commission on University Education recommends an income contingency plan whereby students would repay loans through a surtax on their postgraduate incomes. My question is to the Minister of Education, Advanced Education. Given that this proposal would increase opportunities for qualified students to attend colleges or universities regardless of their financial situation, will the Minister commit to supporting this income contingency proposal?
Good.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member made reference to, if I can quote him, disadvantaged students. We're the only province in Alberta that provides in excess of $30 million to disadvantaged students, including single parents. As to the proposal, Mr. Speaker, of the honourable member for Forest Lawn about a contingency repayment program, i.e. as you earn, you would pay out of a tax system, is one that's been discussed at various levels. It appears to us, however, if we're to maintain a viable student financial assistance program, we must have students who repay their loans in a uniform fashion on a predictable way. So at first blush, it doesn't appear to me, Mr. Speaker, in spite of what Dr. Smith's report says, to be a particularly functional plan.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Since the Minister is unwilling to provide unequivocal support for an income contingency plan, will he at least now commit to a program that would provide additional provincial support for financially disadvantaged students in proportion to increases in students' fees? For example, maybe should mandate that part of student fee increases should go to providing support for the financially disadvantaged.
Hear, hear. Good.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are the only province, to my knowledge, that has spent a year reviewing the whole question of tuition fees and student financial